Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel where stories are told to promote mental health. In this video, I sit down with Sarah Cusack to talk about grief. Around 2 years ago, Sarah's dad passed away and she has been incredibly brave in talking openly about her experiences and what she's learned from that. And I admire her immensely for doing that. In this video, Sarah talks about the difficulty in accepting the loss of a loved one, how purpose has really helped her, and the role she thinks friends can play in supporting someone through the grieving process. I personally learned so much from this conversation. I have no doubt that you guys will too. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Sarah Cusack.
The one thing that I really want to ask you is with regards to how grief can have an impact on your mental well-being, because I know you lost your father a year and a half ago, which I'm still really sorry to hear about, and I know that was an incredibly tough journey for you, and I read your blog post, which I would recommend everyone read on roamingsarah.com, and you talk about what happened and how you dealt with that process. But my question is, because there's going to be people who watch this who will lose loved ones. There's going to be people who might have previously lost loved ones. And how would you deal with that in the long term? Obviously, you need to have a grieving process, but what happens after that? How did you deal with that?
I think it's the most difficult part is actually letting the grief do its thing and actually accept the loss, because you lose this big part of your life, and actually accepting that is difficult. And I think I resisted it for quite a long time, and I diverted my attention and I had escapist tactics to just avoid it. It's really easy to fall into unhealthy habits, I guess, off the back of grief, and also to, I guess, look at grief's close neighbours, I guess. You've got things like regret, and you've got anger, and all of these other emotions that you experience that are heavily tied in with grief that can sometimes be easier to focus on than the actual loss and the sadness, because that doesn't feel very nice. But it's easier to focus your attention on anger because you can be angry at it, and it can make you feel like you're getting something out of your system. And I think regret is another one. You get swallowed up in the things that you didn't say and things you didn't do, and it's really can be really difficult. I think one of the most helpful things for me, rightly or wrongly, was purpose. So work really helped. Having a continued sense of drive and not letting my hardworking nature just fall off a cliff. I mean, you do make a conscious decision not to let everything fall apart. There are days where you're like, screw it all, I'm just going to throw it all in the bin, and
And I think it's okay to have those days as well sometimes.
Yeah. But
it's probably being aware of that, isn't it? But sorry, you kept on saying purpose and how that...
Yeah, I mean, you make a conscious decision, and some people don't. Some people choose to let things fall off a cliff, and that's also okay, but it's much harder to recoup once you've created lots of damage in your life and you've torn down bridges and you've ruined relationships. And that does happen for some people who are grieving because they don't have any other coping mechanism. But I think trying to remember the things that made you happy before, and even if you're just going through the motions, just doing those things in the hope that you will somehow feel that happiness again is helpful. But it's difficult at first, because all of the things that used to make you happy don't make you happy anymore, because you feel a bit dead inside for a while. So that's quite hard to take stock of, and you change as a person, and so you have this evolving process where you realise that you're not going to be the same person again. So how do you cope with that? Mm-hmm. And it's an ongoing conversation, really.
How long did it take you to find that purpose and that drive? And is it something which you knew that you had, or is it something you tried and you learned along the way? Because I imagine that probably took some time, from going from a state of grievance to, right, let's get up, I've got this purpose, I'm working towards this bigger goal, let's focus my direction there.
I actually kind of switched into it probably like autopilot quite quickly.
Yeah.
Partly as a way of making sure that my family weren't worried about me, and making sure that, we've all just got to try and keep going, and you've just got to try and keep life ticking on as normal, otherwise it's all going to fall to to rubbish. You know, if I don't go to work, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. I won't have anywhere to live. It's like, you know, you can't just let everything stop. The world doesn't just stop. So you have to just, I think part of it's mindset, and not everybody has the same mindset. You know, I realise I'm quite headstrong and quite driven and determined.
Absolutely. I can vouch for that.
Yeah, you know, and other people in my family have coped with it differently, you know. I'm also in a lucky position where I'm okay with talking about my feelings. If you don't have that, then actually the grieving process can be quite difficult because you can't mull things over, you can't figure things out.
Is talking about your feelings something which is natural to you, or something you've had to learn about?
I think it's kind of like emotional intelligence, isn't it? It's something that grows. I think travelling and meeting lots of people from around the world and having big, mind-broadening conversations with people from all walks of life has really, really helped. I wasn't always like that. So I guess I've practised at it. And my family aren't the most forthcoming and emotional talking family. We're quite staunch and closed, so.
And going back to like going through your grieving process in the short term, like what would you, because as a friend, if, for example, all you want to do is be there for someone, all you want to do is support, but then again you're also conscious that it's very sensitive and you've got to give you time, so like what would you have said to your friends, what would you have wanted your friends to have done during that time, if you could have asked them?
I would have just asked them to just check in every now and again. It's, in the beginning, you have a big support network. You know, you have a funeral and there's loads of people around and people are checking how you are, and you get sent flowers and cards and everybody sends you messages. And after a month or a couple of months, that disappears. And people have their own lives to get on with, and you're not the centre of somebody else's universe, you know, but you're left alone with that grief. And I think just thinking, I'm just going to send them a message and just see how they are and invite them out. And even if they don't want to come, just know that they're still invited. And, you know, because there's an element of self-conscious that comes after that. You know you're in a state of grief, you know you're in absolute misery to be around, and you know that, you know, people probably find it really difficult to be around you because it's really awkward to talk about what you've been through. And so people don't want to invite you out because they're worried that you might be the party pooper, you know, and then this whole social anxiety creeps in because you're like, oh, I'm that person no one wants to be friends with now because I'm in a really low place, because I'm always really happy, and like I'm Sarah who's like, you know, fun and bubbly, and it's like, oh, can we cope with Sarah if she's not that? I don't know.
Yeah, but this is what I say to people, and it's interesting, this comes up into most conversations. It's like, you've got to look past what people are like currently. So for example, in a state of grievance, in a state when you might be feeling down, you are this person that isn't truly you. That isn't you. You are the person who is based on your history. You're fun, loving, kind. You're who you were well before all that stuff happened. And that's still in you. That still exists in you. But at the moment, it's just covered in a cloud that's kind of pulling that to one side, and this other person is coming out because that's driven by emotion, whereas the other thing is still in there. All it takes is a little bit of time, a little bit of patience, and before you know it, you're going to be, you are that fun, loving, super happy, positive, extroverted Sarah that you always have been. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree. And also, it's okay if they're not. If they don't return to that person, because you can't go through an experience like that unchanged. There will be, you know, you might be just more generally melancholy and sadder than you were before. You might just be a bit deeper in your conversations, and actually changes your perspective on life. So maybe you don't agree with the way they live their life anymore when you used to get on really well, but actually they question things more. So your relationship can change, and that's fine too. You know, you're evolving people, but I would also say don't be afraid to sit with them in that place. A lot of people, I think, when you're a big personality, I think people come to you for positive energy. When they're feeling low, they're like, I know who's going to pick me up, who's going to, you know, really spruce up my day. Somebody with lots of energy. And actually, sometimes you need that on the reverse. And I think that I find it difficult to find that in other people. You know, people can. So there are some people that are very negative that I find a drain to be around. So I have to be in a really good place to cope with them, because they come to me for that. But also just being on a like low level and just sitting with somebody in their depression, just going around and watching a movie and not trying to make them okay, that's fine. Just companionship and company can be, you know, really helpful.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Sarah, and like I said before, I admire her so much for being so open about her experiences, which are incredibly personal, but I know that there's a lot of people who will gain a lot of value based on what she said in that interview. My one takeaway from this conversation is that it's okay to sit in that state of sadness with someone, and we don't always have to be the person who cheers them up, but actually we can just be the person that demonstrates that I'm with you through this process. What was your one main takeaway from this conversation? Please let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Last but not least, please share this video with someone who you think will gain value from it, and please subscribe for weekly videos. And until next time, I'll see you in my next video.